Hey there, guys. It is Rachel Feldman, and here we are Friday at 12, where we go over a bunch of different things that, of course, you need for your wellness biz. If you don't know about me, I will just say this. Stop. Go on over to rachelafeldman.com and you can go to our podcast. We have 3 free courses, 2 free list builders that you can use instantly in your business. And of course, a lot of tips and blogs and stuff all like that. So for today's training, what we are going to dive into is the client journey. You will often hear me talk about niching, getting really, really super clear on your niche, getting extremely clear on your signature process. I always say it's very important to niche down, polarize down, and help your ideal client to understand why you're different. We can all say, I help people who are struggling with ABC, but when we go into that with 1, 2, 3 process, we're really highlighting those areas of our business that we want to consistently talk about. Often you'll hear this in content planning, such as the categories you're going to talk about. But for today's training, I really want to focus on how this can help you choose your freebies, your workshops, your signature offers. So without further ado, let me actually share the screen because I brought up a step-by-step sheet so we can stay focused and we can make this quick action steps that, of course, you can use today. So if you are listening to this, of course, on audio, what I'm showing is a client journey map. There are some of you that come to us at yourhealthcoachbiz.com, or even you get on a phone call with me on Zoom, or you're messaging me in a direct message or personal message, and you are really crystal clear on this journey. Maybe because you took this journey, you had to figure out these steps for yourself. That was similar to my experience. I knew what I wanted to change in the process of getting better for your gut, for food allergies, for autoimmune, working with kids and family who had needed early intervention because I'd experienced so much of that. I also knew that I wanted to specialize in gut and that I really wanted to talk about this vicious cycle that my ideal client, many of your sisters, your brothers, your moms, your dads, your friends have gone through. And that's why for me, it was extremely important for me to think always about this potential client. Well, that sounds like a lot, correct? And it can feel extremely overwhelming. But what I want to take you through today are some key questions. For those of you watching this on video, of course, take a screenshot of the screen. And for those of you listening, get a pen and paper so we can really get deep. We can get deep and down and dirty and talk about how to set yourself apart in a world where there are many people doing the same thing you do. But it is the steps that you take somebody through that is significantly different. And I've talked to thousands of coaches, and each one of you might say the same exact niche, but you have a very different way of either looking at the step-by-step process, or you're super clear that if somebody works with you, that even though you're working on gut, that you're focusing on hormone and you're focusing on adrenal. Each one of you have a very different belief system, very different vision for your business. And our job is to help you to figure out what exactly can we help you fill in those places on either your work with me, in your courses, retreats, masterminds, 3-month intensives, etc., let alone in the free offers where you're building the awareness. You're setting the stage for your ideal client to understand what it would be like to work with you. And that's why we always highlight these key areas of our business, our steps, so that we solo focus in those areas and we're able to create content around the solutions to, of course, the problems that your ideal client has. So I want you all to sit there and say, okay, I want to help people and do that. I want to help who are struggling with, and I want you to help people who are struggling with, people who have X issue. And what I help them with is this signature process where I take them through step 1, 2, and 3. For any of you, of course, watching this, drop in, who do you help? Do you help, women in their 40s that are struggling with gut issues? But get specific. What about those gut issues are the core problems that these people have? Because many of you might be working with somebody all with the same core problem of, let's just say, emotional eating. But you're attracting people that are coming with a different set of problems. You might be attracting a woman who is in the part of her journey where she's still feeling shame, a lot of guilt. She's scared to tell anyone, and she's really keeping this secret to herself. She's that person that needs clearly to hear something from you in your messaging, in your client journey that does appeal to her. And that might be even a freebie or even a checklist on, mindset and emotional eating, or being intuitive to what you actually are eating. And what's the roadmap for that? Or how do you actually figure out you're an emotional eater? So when you're thinking of her problems, think, what in my business, get really big on this vision. What in my business can I help her with? Like, what would be step 1? And then what would be actually step 2? If she's really mastered this step 1 of understanding that she's got to be aware of these triggers, understanding her stress, understanding her inability to communicate clearly, what would you offer her? And then when she graduates from that step, without even you thinking it's a 6-month program, it's a 3-month program, I want you to write it down right now. Does she need to then go deeper into mindset? Because you believe that that truly is the path to getting somebody better? Or do you believe that she is going into an intuitive eating program? Or do you approach emotional eating more as like stress eating? So it's not that you're working with people with intuitive eating, but you're speaking it more relative to how Janine Roth talks about our emotions, holding our feelings in, even Brene Brown, just in general of mindset. Do you feel that your first step is actually to focus on weight, because that's what your ideal client wants? That's what your ideal client, that's the hook that would bring them in, because that woman is still obsessed, like, oh my God, I've got to control this. But she's really probably binge eating, she's stress eating, but she's not an emotional eater. Still in the same niche, still the same kind of person, but do you agree that that's a little different? So I want you to actually write down, I help people who are struggling with, who have the following issues. And I help them to recover by this step-by-step process I've developed. So he or she can, it's all that promise. So actually think about your ideal client, and don't just think, well, here's the solution, but actually think, what are the things that this ideal client actually wants? And it's actually the exciting part of doing this and really thinking about your ideal client, because this is when it is an amazing thing for you to start doing a poll, start asking people questions so that you're really clear on, what your ideal client is desiring. And for many of you, you've been through this. So either you can tap into your own experiences, people that you've helped, family members, etc. So think about when this particular person, think about their ultimate dream. So write it down right now. This person that has emotional eating, we'll call her Sally. Sally has always had a trouble standing up for herself. Sally even had a mom who just would always make her feel like she was insignificant, or would just dismiss her emotions, be like, oh, Sally, it's nothing. Like, just go have something to eat. Not realizing, the mom is not realizing how much that's imprinting Sally, where Sally is creating this narrative in this story immediately. Oh, wow. I have to, I shouldn't be really sharing what I feel. And so Sally finds that her whole life, she continues to operate in this same narrative. She chooses a husband that's very similar to her mom. She walks around and she feels depressed. She has these beautiful children and these babies that she's birthed, but she still feels like she's worthless. What does Sally really want in her life? Is Sally's dream that she stops this emotional eating that she's been doing forever, that she stops shoving her emotions down? What does Sally really desire? We all say, oh, to feel better and to express herself and to live at peace. But really think, for the person who is stress eating, doubts herself, is it that weight has really affected her? Doesn't mean you're a weight loss coach. Doesn't mean that you're talking macros and micros. Is that I really want you to think about this process that you teach and who you desire to attract. A lot of us will get overwhelmed, of course, in building our ecosystem, creating our signature offers. And we have a tough time thinking about these steps that our client wants to go through. What I want you to also focus on is, in this process, what do you really believe? Do you believe that Sally needs to start at this, end emotional eating program that we have? Or do you feel like Sally would be better actually starting with a habits program, getting her to actually take care of herself? So something like 30-day fresh start, and then taking her into a mindset, or something that actually is restoring her gut, because you believe that a lot of these pathogens and bacteria and junk in the gut can lead to imbalances in neurotransmitters, can lead to emotional eating because there's sugar imbalances. The way that you view it, I just want to say this clearly, the way you view your signature process doesn't need to be okayed by somebody else. It is so deep within you. What it needs to be okayed, per se, is that it really speaks to your ideal client. It's thinking of the type of people that are attracted to you, that have probably been in your life, that have even been potential clients, or if you have clients, really looking at the type of person and saying, for this type of person, maybe not me, maybe the you and me would go right to the emotional eating and the intuitive eating program, but for the person that you're attracting, what do you feel is the process? And then furthermore, to really dig deep into why you feel that way and to own it, to really own, this is how I help people. I help people in these steps because every other book out there, it doesn't cover this process. There's snippets in all these different places, but I created this signature process because I see people who are struggling with 1, 2, 3, and I know they've tried ABC. I understand that they did everything typical, but typical doesn't work. Typical never worked. And so that's why I developed step 1, step 2, step 3, that I cohesively take my client through. For some of you, this, let's just say Sally, the stress eater, she's gained weight, she feels tired, her libido sucks. She's getting that belly bump. I mean, it's all the common things. Kind of, she eats, she feels full, she feels yucky, she's self-doubting herself. She thinks she's getting old, she feels old, she looks old, doesn't feel sexy. All the common things that we hear. When you hear this from her and you start to think, what would she desire the most? Really think, if I were in Sally's shoes with this kind of person, what would be the thing that I need to test with her? Do I need to test, that she's looking for that desired weight, so that I know in my messaging, I'm going to talk about these problems, these pain, the thoughts that she's thinking. It doesn't mean that you can't have exactly the signature process for her that you believe. Let me just explain that. That process that you're taking Sally through for emotional eating, whether it's an approach of hormones, gut, emotional eating, stress eating, mindset, habits, you can lay that out and be clear with conviction, but know that you still want to talk about Sally's biggest desires and show her that you can achieve weight loss by following this signature process. So remember, no matter what programs you have from us, or I think of also one of the coaches in California who bought a bunch of our programs when, the environment went more to an e-learning. She said, well, for me, I do get people that want weight, and I'm not a weight loss coach. I help my clients to balance their chakras, to detox their mind, to reset their habits. And so for her, it's a process and approach that isn't just found in like one program. She bought the chakra freebie, and she actually made the chakra challenge, and she made that a entry to come in to understand what she does. And she says, for all my clients, no matter what's happening in their life, we have to start there. And so that really imprinted for her, this is what I want to be known for. I want my clients to know that this deep inner journey, we have to start at a baseline. And that was her baseline. She, again, with her intuitive eating program, she looked at that as a women's wellness, like come back to self, come back to soul, come back to the womb program. So for her, in her vision of her signature process, she was really thinking about these different people who come to her with different problems, but still what has to always be at the foundation. She was like, the chakras have to be there, the tinctures, the teas, the herbs, the essential oils, and then detoxing that person's body. And then we really get to have that woman present to be able to do the work. So with that being said, let's go on to the next part. I want you to actually start to do, like I said, some polls and surveys, really asking people, what are the biggest obstacles that they have in their life? Because when you're thinking about your client journey, you're thinking about what freebies do they need to come into? What workshops does this person need to either attend live, or what workshops can you use as pre-recorded videos that you start putting on YouTube, or that you pitch to a podcast, or you pitch to the doctor who already knows you, the wellness center, potential referral partners to get in front of their list to be visible. So I want you to actually write down, what is my ideal client looking for? What problems do they have right now? What of course is my niche? What problems do they have right now? And how can I make these offers to be the mini solutions? I really want each one of you to then go to this next step and understand what are not only her greatest desires, but also her greatest fears. And why are you that person to help? Can you relate to this person because you've been there, or you helped your child, or you were a nurse in a hospital and just got so frustrated with how people were being, helped? Were you a doctor that is now a coach? Were you an acupuncturist that is now doing coaching? Did you graduate from IN, FDN, etc., all these different schools? Why? What makes you the person for this ideal client that you are envisioning, that you are feeling, that you are seeing, so that you can really start to understand how to speak to this person? Because imagine this, if you really get clear on exactly what you need to say, your signature processes will always work. Let me say that again. If you really know what are the problems and you've gotten people on the phone and you've done some market research, you've polled people, you've done surveys in different Facebook groups, and you're crystal clear on who you're actually attracting and how they're saying their problem, then it's limitless, because then you can start to really message to this person like, hey, I know that you're, struggling with autoimmune. Let me talk about the different autoimmune diagnosis that I often see people have. And the reason that I developed my program, where we start with a grain-free detox, or we start with the AIP program, or we start with the 30-day gut fix, and then I transition you into an anti-inflammatory diet. Or we start at the 30-day, we start working on your gut, and then we're working on mindset. We're working on so much of that stress factor that often still, has you go into fight and flight. The part that I really encourage you when you're thinking about what you want to offer is think about the type of person that you actually attract. Is this person in the beginning stages, like they don't even have a clue why they're in the place that they are? Or they know that something's off, but they don't know what steps to do, because it's just tests are coming back and they're not showing any real results, or somebody's saying to them, oh, your thyroid looks fine. Oh, you have some inflammatory markers, but like, don't worry about it. All of those kind of problems in the beginning, I call them level 1, 2, and 3 problems. Or are you messaging, or are you attracting somebody in your signature process that's at that intermediate area? They have been diagnosed, they have these key terms, and your approach with that person who's at a next level of problems, of course, is a little different. The reason that I want you to even think of this is when you're on a discovery call, or you're answering in a personal message or a DM, or you're doing a challenge, you will close and convert and always be selling with your heart, selling with your soul, because you know that exact signature process is right for the person at the beginner. That exact signature process in your brain, you're like, oh, this person was diagnosed with XYZ. I know that I'm going to take them on this process. So on that phone call, you're really clear. Like, we're going to start here because you have this diagnosis, and I want to get a baseline, and then we're going to move to really seeing if your adrenals are a mess. Or is it that person at a more advanced stage? So that what you start to do is you start to see that for some of you in the beginning, you will have this one process. But as you start to see and get more clients and expand your business, or expand your one-on-one maybe into groups, or into courses, or into low-cost offers, like low-cost master classes, maybe paired with a 7-day program, you'll start to see that the type of person that you're attracting. I know that I thought I would be working with myself all the time. That person who had tried everything, jaded, overwhelmed. And I really was looking for somebody who could put all the pieces together. What I found is that that person that needed all the pieces put together needed to also not only work with me, but in conjunction with some other people. And so the way that I created my signature process for that person is that I took them through step 1. They started working with myself and another practitioner, because I didn't do testing at step 2. And I always would sit there with either their team members or the person who was doing testing, then reevaluate. So step 3 was a reevaluation to see what next path did we actually need to put that person on or work with? What was actually the most glaring? I found that I attracted a lot of people that were very busy moms, because I started my business in my 30s with 2 kids. And so for that person, they most often had the woes of that busy mom. And so my signature process for the busy mom who didn't have like massive glaring issues was more of, habits, educating about gut, educating about kids and good probiotics, kids, and all the things to keep yourself healthy, when you're a mom, let alone with your little munchkin. And so that was a huge part of my business. But what I realized is that some of that beginner, that person's like, I just don't feel good. My stomach's always bloated. I feel nauseous after I eat. Sometimes I even throw up after I eat. Soon turned into that intermediate and unfortunately sometimes those advanced stages. So I didn't have the same process for every different person because that wouldn't have converted. Many of you are working with like that really busy mom, and maybe you have a program that she's supposed to do, but she just can't commit right away. It overwhelms her, or it overwhelms the CEO that you're working with. Think of the step before that. What process is going to help them and also to get them the best wins? So if you needed to add in a part where it was just about like the basics for that person, really getting them to feel comfortable to go into either a more restrictive diet or go into either more responsibilities, such as castor oil pack and Epsom salts, or taking supplementation. Think, as I said earlier, of the type of person that you're attracting. Many of our coaches who have thriving practices and have about 20 minutes in between each session have what we call like different tracks, different processes for people, of course, at what I said, beginner, intermediate, advanced. And so they know even in that first either quiz or pre-qualifying questions before they get on the phone, they know the type of person and what is probably the best process for that person. Secondly, for those of you who are running groups or even memberships, you have a really good idea of the type of person that you're attracting for that group. And so that you can really sit there and say, if I'm working with people with, if I specialize in emotional eating, but I really want to do this group, that this group would be ideal for, that woman more like Sally. What would that group, then what would I really hope Sally to understand? Where is she coming in then on the awareness? Is she maybe coming in because I'm talking about sugar, weight, stress, kids' health? What are the biggest things in Sally's life that are her desires, her goals, her worries? And then really being able to think about that program and say, for this woman who's extremely overwhelmed and she has a lot of self-doubt, it may be better for me to look at something like 4-month reboot and do like a 4-month program with women as a kind of more of a mastermind, or versus looking at the 3-month Eat with Intuition. And I know for a lot of you, this part can be extremely overwhelming, or it feels like you just don't get it, but you do. And what I'm trying to say, and I hope that you've really heard it, is take time this weekend. Take like 48 hours, 72, to really think about the type of person that you're attracting. Some of us create these dream businesses, but we don't really think about our ideal client. We think of exactly what we would want. And so take time to either interview friends, interview people that are in groups, take polls, get a clear sense of who you really want to attract or who you are attracting. And for those of you that have thriving businesses, as you know, that scaling and growth phase is when we start to have these other opportunities so that we can really build out our offers and start to build out different streams of income within our practice, because of course we are, fully booked in our one-on-one. If you have questions, guys, please write down who you help, what are their biggest problems, what are their biggest desires, what are the things that pain them in their life, their worries. Think about the offers that you have and think about what you really want to help people with. And then, of course, take time to create what offers you would think would be most ideal in your one-on-one. If you're doing groups, is that the same offer in your one-on-one? Because when you start to get super crystal clear on that process and the steps that you take, and for some of you, it may be one program, but step one is that you do an elimination diet. Step two is that you're adding in labs. Step three is that you're reevaluating. And so for you, it makes sense to have like a 3 or 6 month program. But when we also know, like, why does this person need to take these steps that we say? For me, it was, and I'll just, end with this. I realized before I became a coach, or actually when I just started first coaching, I sat there and I was like, with all the information, with all the probiotics and the enzymes and the bitters, and, if you, of course, go gluten-free or, all these different aspects that we all try, why can't people get better? And I realized as I was doing a lot of work in my own family and working with people with food allergies, I realized that there was such a missing link in the typical book. I would go and buy, a book from John Juilliard. Not John, Paul Pitchford, John Juilliard, Josh Axe, Alejandro Younger, Kim Schneider. And I would always sit there and say, there's not this one book that I can buy to do an elimination diet, because I'm intolerant to nuts. I'm intolerant to grains. I don't do well, even though there's no gluten. And so I realized if I started to be able to explain this missing gap, this missing connection within my signature process, and why I touched on adrenals, and why I touched on blood sugar, why I touched on autoimmune, why I touched on mindset, why I touched on stress, why I touched on detox, but really made it a succinct process, it helped me to explain to people why they were still struggling with weight, why they were still struggling with gut, why they still had food sensitivities. And I realized that for my business, I needed to start everyone on a type of detox, a type of baseline, because everyone would come to me and say, no, I am eating healthy. And I needed to understand that everyone's version of eating healthy was different. What would give me the best baseline, the best place to start people, to help them see and have their aha moments that not every food was right for them. And then I started adding on these parts, which was detox, gut, adrenal, stress, and mindset. And those were these aspects when I thought about taking somebody down, this journey. It was always focusing on that, which meant that my freebies, my free offers, my workshops, my lives, my pitches to people were about detox, autoimmune, this vicious gut cycle of gut and detox, and how we really can't repair the gut unless the adrenals are healthy, which has always been such a missing component in my life. So when I sat there and really thought, why do I do this? Who do I want to work with? Why am I different? How did my experience really help me to shape this signature business that I've out there? I started at these core fundamental questions. And for those of you that have programs from us and you're trying to, of course, add in a different element, you don't need to recreate the whole wheel. You just need to say, wow, if I'm going to start people with affirmations, add in the affirmations as a step one. And don't sit there and get so much into self-doubt, thinking that maybe it's not right. Really step into the belief that anything that you've put together is based on your experiences, your vision, your values, how you want to show up in life. And that when you really show up in that way of authenticity, thinking about your ideal client and their problems at every step of the day, you will always make content that converts. You will always have a signature process for the person that you are attracting, because it will really come from either your own pain, the pain that you've witnessed or the pain that you feel because you see what's missing in the world. Guys, I think we're having some connection issues today. So if you have any questions, please, of course, let us know. And you can just hit me up at yourhealthcoachbiz.com, and I will see you guys later. Have a beautiful one. Bye, guys.